Hey, what's up guys? It's Rico here, CEO of SourceFind Asia, host of Made in China podcast, and the host of the SourceFind Asia YouTube channel, of course, back with another one. And I gotta tell you, it feels so good to be back in an office space with, we're in a full suit recording these videos. I'm working out of WeWork Menarco Tower. I'm checking out the spot, checking out a couple other co-working spaces, trying to take advantage of COVID-19 pricing. But that's neither here nor there. This video, I'm going to be reacting and reviewing the Coolest Cooler crowdfunding campaign from a manufacturing standpoint. They were a campaign for a cooler which had a shit ton of features in it. They were requesting $50,000, ended up receiving 13.2 million, almost $13.3 million, and basically failed to fulfill their orders over the course of 4 or 5 years. And then they officially shut down in December 2019. So their campaign was October 2014. I think they were promising to deliver about a year later. If I remember correctly, they only delivered to maybe 30-40% of their backers. So I'm gonna be reacting to the campaign video, and then I'm gonna be reacting to the product itself, and just kind of breaking down what I think went wrong from a sourcing manufacturing standpoint. Let me get a sip of my water here. All right, let's get started with the video.
That's the sound of a cooler coming down off the shelf. It's the sound of imminent fun. So why haven't cooler designs changed in almost 50 years? Boring coolers are boring, break easily, and are a pain to get to and from your destination. I wanted a cooler that was really well built, yet had so much fun built into it that I would look for excuses to get outside and enjoy it. So I created the Coolest. The Coolest is a complete redesign of what a cooler can be. First, you've got this 18-volt rechargeable blender. You don't realize the number of places you could really go for a blended cocktail or smoothie until you've got a blender built right into the lid. You're already carrying around a cooler full of ice and tasty beverages. Why not blend them up and become a summertime hero anytime, anywhere? And what's a party without music? The Coolest comes with a removable Bluetooth speaker that connects to any smartphone to wirelessly stream music from up to 30 feet away. It's amazing where speaker technology has come in the last few years. You can skip songs and adjust the volume right from your phone, and this little box can really put out some sound. And since you've got that 18-volt battery for the blender, why not get the most out of it? Maybe your camera battery is low, or maybe you have an iPhone and want to use it after 2 in the afternoon. Recharge your gear wherever you are with this waterproof USB charger.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed, even when I watched this campaign like 3-4 years ago, is just the sheer amount of products that are within the cooler. So you have the cooler, which is the core product, right? Which at its basic level is a plastic injection molded box. So it's very simple. Anybody that's had a cooler before, of course you have a little bit of the filling that keeps in the cold temperature and stuff like that. But now you have that box, and then on top of that you're adding an 18-volt blender, which means there's a battery in there, and then you have a USB charger, and then you have the Bluetooth speaker. So you have the core product, and then you have 3 other products that are all electronic based. All of those products are going to be sourced from different suppliers. So like essentially you're making right now, I mean just pausing the video right now, I'm not going to pause every single time he shows a new feature. I'll talk about that at the end. But essentially this is 4-5 different products in one, and it's never been done before. So that's something to take note of.
Charger. The party doesn't stop just because the sun goes down, and you shouldn't have to freeze your fingers searching endlessly for your favorite drink. The Coolest has waterproof LED lights embedded in the lid so you can easily find what you're looking for.
Another product.
Push of a button.
Another
One of the
separate
biggest
product.
hassles of outdoor fun is hauling your gear back and forth from the car and I've experimented with various ways to solve the problem. I love coolers with wheels, but I hate that they refuse to help carry anything else. The Coolest has you covered with locking tie-down bungees, so you can carry all your stuff in just one trip. And what about getting organized to go out in the first place? The Coolest helps out almost like a picnic basket to make sure you always have a few key essentials with built-in storage for reusable plates, cutting boards, and this awesome rust-proof ceramic knife. Plus, the removable divider gives you a whole new level of flexible packing options. You can pull the drain plug on one side, and your Coolest can stay dry and cool just like your refrigerator. Say goodbye to soggy sandwiches. Regular cooler tires are flimsy and sink right into the sand. We designed the Coolest wheels to be twice as wide to roll twice as easily. But how many hours of your life have you lost looking for a bottle opener? My grandpa's cooler had one, and so does the Coolest.
So here we go again. So now I'm not even talking about electronics, just the different parts of it. So the compartments, the bottle opener, the divider, the wheels. Again, they seem like simple products because it's not electronics, but these are all different parts of the total product, which means they will all need to be made from a mold, which means those are individual mold pieces that would have to fit into this. So each mold, and I've talked about this in previous videos and stuff like that, a mold can be anywhere between $1,000, it can all the way up to $15,000, $20,000, depending on how complicated the mold is, what the material is, and all that stuff. So you can imagine, even at a small level, all of these individual molded pieces, this could be, to make one mold or to make one full product could be already $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So that's one aspect. Like, I know obviously once you make the molds and you put the product together, it becomes cheaper to manufacture after that stage. But just think about that. This is the first time you're making the product. It's the first time that the factory is making this product, and you have 7, 8 individual pieces into this. Some of it electronics, some of it plastic injection molded. And you're going to have to source different suppliers for each one of these, and then you're going to have a final supplier to put it together.
I create products for a living, and to manufacture the Coolest, I've lined up a world-class sourcing company with years of experience making top-shelf products, and they're standing by to coordinate all stages of production and logistics. This will make sure you not only get your Coolest on time, but it's the highest quality Coolest we can possibly make.
So, I mean, that's an interesting point, right? So he says he's been designing and making products for years. So he has experience with manufacturing. I don't know how much experience he has with manufacturing, but he says it, so I believe it. And then he's also working with a world-class sourcing company. He doesn't mention the name of the company. I mean, I know from firsthand experience from running our business, even if you have a ton of experience, when you kind of put yourself in a position where you're making something that you haven't made before, and it's that complicated, even the best in the game can fail at producing the product. They can maybe make a serviceable prototype or stuff like that, but to keep that consistent quality on a mass production might be quite difficult. I'm going to talk about a little bit more after the video. So just keep in mind, it's like, even though you're working with a professional sourcing company, you still have to realize that this is an original design. There's so many things that can go wrong. You need to really be an expert and then not try to make your first version of your product too overly complicated.
As you can see, we have our design finalized and ready for the big leagues. But to move to the next stage requires expensive tooling to pay for all the Coolest parts, and the capital to buy our components at a volume discount.
Okay, so let's talk about what that means. So he just mentioned that to move to the next stage, they have expensive tooling to pay for, which means creating the various mold pieces that I'm talking about. And actually, just after this, he mentions,
if you were to go out today and buy all the gear we packed into the Coolest, it would cost over $500.
So he also mentions that if you were to buy all these individual components in a regular basis, this would cost you over $500. So yeah, to manufacture the actual product, it probably would cost them hundreds of dollars per unit to manufacture. And I think they're only charging like...
By backing this Kickstarter campaign for just $180, you can be one of the first people in the world with a cooler that's actually cool.
So you see, they're only charging about $200 per unit, but most likely it probably cost them $300 to $500 to produce per unit, especially on the first production run. So the first thing I noticed is the tooling part. What that means is they basically had a functional prototype. This is my guess, by the way. This is my guess, so I could be 100% wrong. From what my guess is that they had a functional prototype of that cooler that they had made. Maybe he made it himself, maybe they worked with a factory to put that thing together. And then they made the campaign, right? And he has his design and he has a functional prototype. Just because you have a functional prototype, it doesn't necessarily mean that the mass production is going to translate to the same quality. And also what tends to happen is when the factory goes to the prototyping phase, once they start the mass production and tooling phase, they start to learn more things, more issues come up with the product. Like I said, if you're talking about this with multiple pieces, some of the pieces are smaller than others. Some of them are being bought from somewhere else and put together. There could be defects. Sometimes molded pieces don't come out perfectly. There's a lot of things that can happen, so they maybe have to retool, which takes longer. Maybe it's more expensive if they want to make the product come out as perfect as possible. So there's so many things that can happen after you have your prototype and then you're actually going to mass production. So that's one of the things I always talk about is like when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, it's really important to engage with a supplier very early before you actually go through the campaign process. Like you should be, when you're creating your designs, when you're creating your prototype, you should already be talking to suppliers and you should be getting feedback on your design and figuring out what is the best way to make this product designed for manufacturing capable. And how that works is typically you consult with the factory or you can find a product engineer that has experience making these kind of products. Another big mistake, which I mentioned already, is the amount of products that they had in this cooler. I mean, it's fucking cool. It's the coolest cooler, right? It's phenomenal. No pun intended. Actually, pun intended. But that's so difficult to produce as a first-time product. Even if they didn't raise as much money as they made and had so many backers, it would still be extremely difficult for the most experienced entrepreneur. Think about it like this. Even with Apple, with all the experience that they have, and all the design and engineering capability, it still takes them a year to 2 years of R&D and production to create an iPhone. So if you're making something that, with the coolest cooler, if you talk about the technology involved, I mean, obviously it's not as advanced as an iPhone in terms of computer stuff and all that stuff, but like in terms of the manufacturing side of things, I don't think they had that much time to produce this product, and they probably don't have the design and engineering capability and sway that a company like Apple does. So you really have to think about it like that. It's like this kind of product, to produce this effectively would take years. I do know that they had a campaign before, which had failed. I think he had requested a larger amount of money on the previous campaign, and then he actually redesigned the product and came back. So in this campaign, like I said at the top of the video, they were requesting $50,000. They ended up getting $13,285,000 with 62,642 backers. So that's the other aspect. And this is one of those things that you can't really prepare for. Like the campaign went gangbusters and it went viral and they made so much money. So you think, okay, fuck, we got $13 million. Like we're rich. It's game over. Like everybody loves us. This is gonna be perfect. We have so much cash to burn through, but it's a gift and a curse actually, because think about it like this. If you were requesting $50,000 to do a small production run, that was supposed to be including the molding and also the actual mass production. So they were probably only expecting maybe a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people, 2,000 people to back the campaign. Now you've gone from like maybe getting quotes from your factory for 1,000 to 2,000 units or 5,000 units to saying, hey, you guys need to make 60,000 plus units on the first production run on a product that doesn't exist. So all those issues that I mentioned before that would make the product more expensive becomes compounded because of the amount of quantity of units that they have to make. And to fulfill that in the time period that they probably promised, which was, this campaign launched in July of 2014. And if you see the delivery dates that they promised, it was around October and December of 2014. So to basically 10x your production capacity, more than 10x your production capacity, and expect to deliver those goods within 6 months on a product that doesn't exist, and like I said, all the potential issues that can come up with producing an original design, was completely unrealistic. To give you some context, our first original design product was a plastic injection molded figurine called Big Hex. It was by Prodigy Game, a Smart Teacher, one of my best friend's companies in Toronto. They have an educational software platform, math meets Pokemon. So that product, the first version, which was just a simple, seemingly simple plastic injection molded figurine, took us 1 year of development between 3 different factories. Granted, there was a little bit of inexperience there, so that's a big part of it, but just that product alone, to get it to the quality that we wanted it to be, took us a year. And then after that, we were able to scale up and make 4 figurines in 6 months. But that was, even the 4 figurines in 6 months we had a pre-established factory, they knew our system, it wasn't like we're doing a production run for the first time. So it made it much easier. But if you're doing a production run for the first time, I think it would have still taken us at least a year, 8 months to a year to get that first batch really good. You can imagine for us, it took us a year, what would seemingly be a much more simple product than this, for them to fulfill in 6 months, you can already see how that would be very difficult to do. So again, with the factory's production capabilities probably couldn't match the demand. Because what would happen is you go and get a quote from a factory for 3,000 to 5,000 units, they give you a per unit cost based off of that, they give you a timeline based off of that, they have their own production schedule with other products that they're making. So then if you come back to them and say, hey, we need to actually make 60,000, they're going to be like, well, I mean, we have other production scheduled and your product is not an easy product to make. We're probably going to lose a lot of money, or we're not going to make that much money, and the amount of effort and labor costs involved with making your product, timeline's going to be 6 months or 8 months or whatever the timeline might be. Or they might be like, hey, if you pay us a little bit extra, give us a little bit more cash and we can push you up the line, you can skip the line. So I'm assuming what happened here was a combination of maybe being a little bit overly ambitious with your first version of your product. And I talk about this with my clients all the time, is like that vision that you have of your first product, original design, is never actually going to be fully realized. There's going to be some sacrifices. There's going to be a few things that don't come out 100%, and don't get too tied to that design. Come up with the minimum viable product, and you can always add on version 2 or version 3, version 4. If you're talking about a crowdfunding campaign, you can show them, hey, this is the MVP. This is the product that I'm making right now. This is where I want to take the product in the future. But in order to get there, we have to start here. And you have to figure out what that is for you. You have to figure out what that is for your backers, what your backers care about the most. The second part of this is making sure that if you get lucky and your campaign goes viral, you have to make sure that your sourcing company has the capabilities of ramping up production and the factory has capabilities of ramping up production. This is obviously a unique situation. Like, nobody's expecting when they request 50K to make 13 million. Like, some of these things are out of your control, but you might be expecting, $30,000 and then make 200,000 or 300,000 or 500,000. You're going to face the same issues. So you have to make sure that your factory is capable of ramping up production capacity, and then also what the timeline would be if you end up having a larger order. So it's important to have those conversations. I also said for the design for manufacturing process, you have to involve the factory very early on to make sure that it's actually realistic to make a product like this. And I think another aspect is under promise, over deliver. So if you're making a complicated product or any crowdfunding product, if you think your timeline for production is going to be 6 months, just say 9 months, say a year. Just add a buffer, because if they back you and they know that they have to wait 8 months or a year to receive a product, if they end up receiving it 6 months early or 3 months early, no one's going to complain about that, right? So, but if you promise 6 months and then end up delivering it 1 year later or 2 years later, 3 years later, like with this situation, you can have a lot of issues. So you definitely want to add a buffer to the production. So yeah, man, that's my little reaction / review to the Coolest Cooler campaign. I'm going to be doing more of these like reaction sort of videos to Amazon FBA, e-commerce courses, and I think crowdfunding will be an interesting one just because there's a lot of examples in crowdfunding that are like this. So if you like this, let me know. We'd love to sort of diversify the content of the channel. And yeah, if you have any other ideas in terms of videos that you would want me to do, or any videos that you want me to react or review, let me know. So that being said, I'm signing off. I'll see you guys next week. Like, comment, share, subscribe.